Okay, welcome back to day 4 of the Little Lizard King swimwear sew-along. We are sewing up the ruffled vintage bottoms of Laguna, and when we left off we had attached one ruffle. I went ahead and attached the second ruffle. Before we top stitch, I want to show you how you can verify that your ruffles are going to be the exact same spot, so that way they're not uneven. So the way you do that is once you have clipped your second ruffle in place, your first ruffle is already sewn, you're going to match up the edges, and you can see that my ruffles that are sandwiched in between are at the same distance from the edge on both the top and the bottom. So that way when we open it up, they're even across the top and the bottom. Now what we want to do is we want to remove the gathering thread. Always want to remove it from the back side. If you pull the top thread, it's going to lock that stitch in place. I'm just trying to get a grab of it because my tails got caught in the seam. So then I'm just going to pull it, remove the front. I'm going to go ahead and trim it out of the seams. Okay. So now we got this back here. Also, if you notice after you have attached the side, if your ruffle seems like you accidentally didn't have it an inch from the top and the bottom, you can always go and unpick just a few of the stitches and then kind of shift that down. You don't have to unpick the whole thing. What we're going to do now is we're going to top stitch this. If you have a serger, you can serge this seam and cut some of it off. If you don't, you can trim it. You really don't need all that bulk. If you have a cover stitch, you can sew the top stitch and then trim it after. I could use my cover stitch, but I will show you just how you can do it on a regular sewing machine, because not everyone has a cover stitch. And I'm going to go ahead and take off my clips from marking the outer seams. I'm just going to do this side because this side will be the exact same, so that way you don't have to wait for me to unpick everything or undo the gathering stitch on that side. I'll move back over to my sewing machine. You can either use a zigzag stitch or a longer top stitch. It's honestly whatever. I will show you. Let's do a zigzag stitch. So we want to lengthen our zigzag stitch, and we want to be fairly narrow. So I'll do a 3 width and a 2.5 length. I'm going to switch my foot so I can stay right along that seam. This foot I like because it's got this little ridge in the back and it helps stay right along that seam. You can also use sometimes for top stitching foot because this guide will also stay right along the seam. But let's see how this one works. You want to make sure your seam is pushed towards the center panel. That's going to keep your ruffle laying down flat. I missed a piece of trimming my seam, so I'll grab that. You do not want to pull on this fabric as you are stitching it. It's just going to be guiding it in place. Okay, so we're going to keep this foot right along the seam. And I'm not pulling on my fabric. I'm just making sure it stays in the place that I want it to. You want to make sure that seam stays the direction you want it to go the whole way down. All right, and that is what the, let me see if I can move back to my table. That is what it will look like with the zigzag stitch. The zigzag will help hold this down pretty well. If you have a thread that matches, I would definitely use a thread that matches. But you really aren't going to see it unless you're super up close. So I will go ahead and trim this. Add your lining, or layers of your lining, both two layers, your front and back lining and your front and back main. I'm going to show you how to sew all 4 pieces together with just 3 lines of stitching and have it completely lined and ready for elastic.